So in this lesson, we're going to talk about the second conditional statement, and that is the switch case statement. Now, this conditional statement is actually quite similar to if and else statement. The only difference of switch case with if else statement is that switch case do check everything from top to bottom, unless you use break. Well, you might be wondering, if else do the same thing, right? Well, they don't actually check the next condition, especially if the first condition is true. Unlike if else, switch actually check everything, like I said, from top to bottom. So if we actually go back to our index.php and to create a new switch statement, you first need to type, of course, switch, and then open and close parentheses, and then you close that with open and close curly braces. And then inside of the parentheses, you add the variable that you want to check. So since we only have here int variable, or we can actually create a new variable. I'm just gonna call this pizza. I don't know why. And then I'll give it a value of pepperoni. Wow. Pepperoni. How do you pepperoni? There you go. And then I'm just gonna end that with semicolon, and then I'm going to use this variable inside of our switch. I'm going to apply that variable, and the next thing we need to do is inside of the switch statement, we need to create a case, and then we need to apply a value. So what value you want to compare. So if you take a look at our if statement, as you can see, this is our variable. It is initialized by 9. And here we check if int is equal to 10, which is not, then it should output it. But this is false. So it will go over here in else statement. It will display the following string. So we can actually type in here pepperoni. So I can just copy this and paste it right over here. So basically this goes switch pizza, check the value of pizza. If it's pepperoni, then we can output, let's say echo, and then let's type in here, the pizza is really pepperoni. Wow. And that's just gonna end that with semicolon. Now, let's actually get rid of the if and else statement. We don't need that anymore. Let's just focus on switch. All right, so if I actually save this and open our front end, and if I refresh this, we will have the following output. The pizza is really pepperoni. And let's go back to our index.php. Now, if I actually copy this and paste it below and again and again and again. Now, like I said earlier, switch and case statement actually check from top to bottom. Now, yes, like I said, if this is true, well, in case of if-else statement, this shouldn't be rendered, right? But since we're using switch, everything will be rendered. So if I actually save this and open our front end, we will have the following output. Now we have the pizza is pepperoni, 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 pepperoni. That's because everything is true. That's correct. Now to stop that, we have to use what's called break. So if we add break in here, and if we save this and open our front end, we will have only one, the pizza is really pepperoni. Now we can just apply the breaks everywhere or in every case. So we can just save that. Now, what if this is not pepperoni? What if we change this to, let's say, pineapple on top? I don't know what pizza is that. And then we can just add in here. Actually, yeah, let's just save this and open our front end. We will have nothing. It's because everything is false. Now, if you remember, with if-else statement, there is a default value, right? If everything is false, then there's else statement, which will render a default value or a default output. With switch case, there is something that we call default. So this is something like else. But in switch, you use default. Now, what is default? Well, default is actually the last option of switch. So if all case is false, switch will directly go to default. So whatever's inside of default will be output or rendered or processed. So let's actually try to add in here echo, and I'll just type OMG, there's no pizza. Oh my. And let's just end that with semicolon. Now, since this is the last case, we don't really need to add break because there's nothing really below the default. So if we actually save this and open our front end, we will have OMG, there is no pizza. So why use switch if I can just use if else, correct? Well, to answer your question, if you want to use switch, or let's say if you have a really simple condition or simple algorithm, then use switch. But if you have a really complicated algorithm or a function, or if you're working on a really complicated function, then that's the time you will be using if, especially if we go something like if let's say if pizza is equal to good, then we can type in here echo pizza is good. And then inside of if, we can add another if. If pizza is equal to big, then pizza is also big. So the difference with switch and if is that you can do nested ifs, but with switch, you can't. At least that's what I know. So if you're making a really complicated or a really huge function or a really complicated condition, then that's the time you'll be using if. But if you're just making a really simple condition, then that's the time you'll be using switch. So I hope that makes sense. The difference is just really, really simple. There's nothing really special about switch and if else. If you want to use if, do it. If you want to use switch, do it. But most of the time, I would say go with if because it's much easier to use or to understand. It's also much easier to read because it's like reading English poem, because it's like if this is something like this, then go something like this. If this is not like this, then do this. While switch is like, all right, switch, case this, case that. I don't even know what's the meaning of case. Why case? Why switch? So it's up to you. It's up to you if you want to use switch or if. But yeah, that's conditional statements. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below or Q&A section if you're watching this on WeeklyHow. And in the next video, in the next lesson, we're going to talk about functions functions.